Gentlemen, good to see you. Welcome. And, you know, we thought, well, okay, we're on this momentous occasion. Where are we going to talk to these guys? And we thought Jersey. We thought somewhere that's a little over the top, but also apparently haunted, this place, is what they tell us. So we figured that would work. So you guys, is it safe to say you aimed high? I mean, you did not hold back with this record, artistically or anything else. Do you think Black Parade is a concept record? And if so, what is the concept?
Well, I think Black Parade is a concept record in like a classic rock sense, like Pink Floyd's The Wall or Queen's Night at the Opera. I consider like a theme record. And Black Parade is really an examination of life and death, and it's really based around a theory that is, when you die, I started to think like, well, when you die, wouldn't it be nice if death came for you however you wanted? And what if it comes from a subconscious memory, and it's some kind of dark version of something, like if your dad took you to the circus, or if you're at a playground as a kid and that's your strongest memory, like that's the way it comes for you. But so for this, we needed an everyman, we needed a hero character, and the patient was that kind of character. It was somebody that you all become. I'm going to be a patient one day, you're going to be a patient, and every listener is eventually going to be a patient in some way.
Is he sort of a metaphor for you, the patient? I mean, did you have this parade experience? Or?
Me and Mikey's dad, our dad took us to a parade when we were kids, and it was a very fond memory, but it wasn't really a metaphor for me. I mean, I think overall the record is a thinly veiled layer of fiction over a lot of truth. You know, and I think it is our most personal record, so I think there is a lot of me in there, there's a lot of the guys in there. But the parade was chosen because it felt like such a cultural thing. It felt like a really powerful metaphor, like the word black and the word parade. It made you think death, but celebration. And that's what the record felt like. It felt like a celebration of life and death, as opposed to some kind of, doom rock record.
I must say, I mean, I've only heard the whole album once, start to finish. It was hard for me to discern specific, just on one listen, characters in a real linear story.
Right.
Is it there for you?
Right. And it's weird. In some ways it is. In some ways it changes. But then I think the more I hear the record, the more I live with it, there's characters that pop up to me every day, like, that I never realized were there. Like, there's a character, I feel like the woman that this person left behind is one of the most important characters. And there's some woman constantly referred to on this record that is never named as a character.
So talking about Queen and Pink Floyd specifically, but also about other 70s bands, because pretty much every review that's come out already, they name check everyone from Alice Cooper to T-Rex to Bowie to Maiden, and I certainly hear a lot of that on there, Cheap Trick. Were there any bands that, as far as you're concerned musically, were more influential on this record than others?
Definitely Queen, Pink Floyd. Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, and then Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. Those are the four big ones to this record. Anything else other than that was kind of incidental.
The Rolling Stone review called it the best 70s record of 2006.
I think that's really amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Because there was like a pageantry and a theater and a majesty to rock in the 70s that has completely been stripped away, drained away by I don't know what, but it's just not there anymore. It hasn't been. And for us, we've always tried to be a theatrical band, but this time it was really about kind of putting your money where your mouth was and being like, well, are we going to be theatrical and like still have this kind of aggressive punk thing going on? Or are we really going to make this music theatrical? And that was all happening in the 70s, yeah. I mean, it's funny because some of it actually came so naturally to us that we didn't really realize the references until later. Like, we had done Teenagers, and then we went to the UK, and the UK label was like, that's just like T-Rex. And we were like, well, we didn't think of that. We just kind of wrote the song.
Let me ask you about another aspect of doing a concept record that people have brought up recently. And they suggested that maybe more conceptual albums are making something of a comeback as a way of kind of combating the tendency on the part of especially young music listeners to download the single.
Right.
To just go for the single or two. Is that part of what appeals to you about having a more overriding concept to an album?
Well, I'll tell you for sure, it's not so much about battling downloading as it is battling a lack of having an attention span. And these days, like, it's become so important just to have singles that it's almost nauseating. Like, I think we were on a trip in Germany last year, and the #1 song in the country was a ringtone
with a frog.
Crazy frog.
Right.
It was a joke ringtone, and like, it was beating
It beat Coldplay.
rock bands. It was beating like Coldplay, and it was very depressing. But we saw that as, this kind of stuff could happen in the U.S. Like, it could be things to come. So that's why, like, the stress put on ringtones or 10-second clips of songs, or even singles to that extent, it was something we were very cautious of. And we wanted to make a record that was an entire experience. If you're in a band, you should have a lot more to say than a 2-3 minute song.
And
a lot more.
Filler.
Yeah.
So, I mean, death, and obviously, other dark subject matter is nothing new for you guys, but would you say that, it seems to me that the take on death on this record is a bit different. It seems like your perspective on it has evolved somewhat.
I agree with that, yeah. It's a much more grown-up approach to looking at death. I think it's because we had a crash course in living and a crash course in growing up from what happened to the band. It's no longer set in this supernatural, gunfights in the desert. There's no more vampires, really. Even though they're referred to, I don't think of them as vampires in a Christopher Lee sense, That's all gone. Kind of like the horror movie of it is gone, and now it's this very grown-up, mature look at life and death.
I think that if anyone really pays attention to MCR and their music and your music and lyrics like Carry On or In Famous Last Words, which people will hear soon enough, it's I'm Not Afraid to Keep On Living. It's a band that really is about life. But I think those who might look at it superficially would say, why are guys in their 20s so preoccupied with death, the subject, the backdrop of death?
Right.
What would you say to that?
Really? Like, seriously? Like, originally? Because to me, nothing feels more like being dead than being in your 20s and having no direction with your life. It was really, I think, a commentary on that. For me, the band kind of always has been. It's been a mouthpiece of kind of, to me, like, men and women in their 20s, just like The Walking Dead. Being part of a workforce that they don't want to be a part of.
No direction, no passion.
Yeah, nothing. Like, no life. And they're not doing what they love. They're not in love. They're just, like, going out to bars, getting wasted, having casual sex. Like, it's a really hollow, empty period in your life. And I think nothing to me felt more dead than being, like, 23.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band.
I was actually surprised that The Patient is rendered as, Lucas Haas is a pretty young guy.
Right.
I guess when I first heard the concept of The Patient, first heard the song, I was imagining, usually when we think of someone on their deathbed, it's someone, at the end of their life.
Right.
Which,
yeah.
Was that deliberate? You wanted someone who was sort of young?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was like that. It's very similar to the Helena thing. Like, we were actually kind of apprehensive about putting a young woman in that coffin because we didn't want to make it seem like we were trying to cater to an audience or get teenagers to like it because, it's like a dead teenager. We weren't ever trying to exploit kids that listen to our music because all kinds of people listen to our music, but we never want to be exploitive. But the purpose in putting a younger person as the patient is because he is dying tragically, and usually tragically means young, and not too young. I had always envisioned the patient maybe in his early 30s, but I could see him being as young as Lucas Haas. I think Lucas is in his 20s.
Right.
I think part of it too is that the listener realizes that in viewing too, when you view the video, like, it can happen at any time, and if you choose to live your life, the wrong way, like, death can come for you at any time, and you don't, sometimes you won't have 60 or 70 years to change the way you've been living. You might only get 20, and while you're on this earth, you have to make the best of what you have.
It's something about being in your 20s. It's a very dark period in life because you're confused about what you're doing. You've made a lot of mistakes. You can't see yourself getting to 30 yet. So it is kind of a tragic period, and there's a lot of anger in, like, 20-somethings,
And you kind of sort of restarted your life and career in your 20s.
I did.
Right?
Yeah, I got a late start because I was kind of in this hermit stage, like this stage of almost suspended animation where I was trying to break in as an artist, and it just wasn't working. I was extremely depressed, and it took me till 25 to realize what I wanted to do with my life for real. It usually takes people, it doesn't take them that long, sometimes longer, you can never tell, but I restarted my life, basically, yeah.
Right. With Welcome to the Black Parade, which obviously people have heard, did you feel when that song was done that you had come up with something as special as I think a lot of us feel like it is as a song?
Well, that song really was about 4.5 years in the making.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did you like work on it, put it aside, then come back to it?
I mean, it started as an original melody, and we loved the melody. It was going to be on our first indie record, and it just didn't come about in like the 2-week time we had to write that record.
It was like literally at the tail end of writing Bullets.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounded a lot like My Way.
Yes.
Originally. It had a very My Way
like
type
Sid
vibe.
Vicious' version.
Yeah, definitely Sid Vicious' version of My
It
Way.
sounds like our time capsule.
Yeah, in a lot of
Just
ways.
waiting
Yeah.
there.
And then we tried to work on it again for 3 Cheers, and I remember it was like we had a bunch of other things that we really wanted to work on.
Right.
So it didn't come out then, and then for this record we're like, all right, we really should just sit down and finish the song because it might be something great.
Right.
Then it became Welcome to the Black Parade.
That song was really a triumph. It felt like a little bit of Bohemian Rhapsody mixed with a Ramones song. And that's kind of how it was, but it was a mini epic. It was like 30-something minutes. And we needed a song that was kind of like the keystone to unlock the mystery of the record. It needed to speak to you right away and kind of encapsulate what that record was about. And so, you know, adjustments were made, and it was a fight to get it finished, but that's why I think the song's so great. So when we finally all heard it mixed, I think we all knew right away that this is it.
A couple specific songs I want to ask you about. And while you guys generally aren't political, Mama is, as best I can tell, it's written from a soldier's point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty harsh anti-war kind of sentiment there. Yeah.
I guess that just comes when you're talking about like cultures or life and death, and you're talking about things that are relative. I think it's political in the sense that it's relative to life and death. It's relative to humanity. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to view that song as a political song. I also know Teenagers is another song that's viewed as a political song. I think it's just it's going to happen when you're dealing with subjects like this. And you deal with war. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to avoid it. So.
Right. And musically, where Mama came from, how did that evolve? I mean, this sort of like, whether it's, I don't know, polka or East European vibe to it?
It's definitely polka.
Yeah. It started, I think, in the arena in Chicago. And I had kind of, just the line was in my head, Mama, we all go to hell. And I thought it was from something else, like a Tom Waits song or a Nick Cave song. And so then I asked Ray to come, you know, hang out, and then he kind of, I said, well, I like hum something, like the guitar, and he then made it better and played it. And then we brought it to sound check, and I think immediately everybody is
we just went with it.
Yeah. And then, of course, getting Liza Minnelli, what a coup. I mean, I know she was a favorite of your grandmother's, right?
Yeah.
And I heard that it was the legendary Liz Rosenberg, Madonna's publicist, who helped make this happen. Is that right?
It was. Rob Cavallo called her up. You know, I was in the booth, and, you know, there's that one part where we had discussed a woman forever, but then eventually I just did the woman's voice. And then I was like, no, it just seems like a cop-out. Like, you know, he goes, well, who do you want to get? I said, we should just get Liza Minnelli. You know, like, why not? Like, how are you going to beat that? Like, what are you going to come with, Barbra Streisand? Exactly. I think that's what I was talking about. Like, you can't come with anybody.
You mentioned Teenagers before, and I got to ask you about, I mean, not only is it one of my favorite tracks on the album, but because I know people are going to gravitate toward a lyric like, if you're troubled and hurt, what you got under your shirt will make them pay for the things they did, especially in the wake of the last month or so, and some of the stuff we've seen going on yet again.
Right.
Is there any hesitation at all about putting a lyric like that out there?
Yeah, it's
There's a hesitation about putting that song on the record.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
There was a couple lines on the record. That's to me the biggest one. That was the one line that I had sat and I went to the guys and I went to Cavallo and I said, is this irresponsible? I know there's a lot of people in rock bands that could give a about responsibility, but you have a responsibility, and it's not because a large part of our fan base just happens to be teenagers. You have a responsibility to everybody. But the thing is, that line is so dangerous, but yet it's so true that it had to be on there. You know, the teenagers are so engendered of violence, and they're so made to, they're like pit against each other in tribes. They are pumped full of drugs to calm them down. I mean, it's really amazing that anybody ever makes it out of high school, and it's getting worse. And it was direct commentary on the violence in high schools in the United States.
It's interesting that you guys have generally not ever caught any flack over, you know, being champions of the trench coat mafias of the world. You know,
not in the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, in the UK, there's a conservative paper called the Daily Mail who they referred to us basically as a death cult that encouraged kids to self-harm. I mean, it was the most ignorant, ridiculous thing we'd ever read. But no, we haven't. We haven't, and I'm really happy about that. I think it's because we're intelligent and we have something to say. We don't use, for example, like God or religion as a scapegoat in a lot of ways that bands will to sell records. You know, we have a lot of respect for everybody and what they believe in. If we didn't have respect for what people believed in, this band it would cease to make any sense.
I've heard a lot about how tough this record was to make, and some of the, you've talked about depression that sort of like permeated the recording process. Where do you think that came from? Was it having a record sort of dealing with issues related to death? Or?
I think that was one of the things. I think whether we like to admit it to ourselves or not, and even though we do live in a bubble, there's stress, there's pressure, there was anxiety. Whether we try to be like too tough for it or be like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
Right, you do care. Yeah.
You want people to say, oh wow, they really did something great. You know.
Right.
Did you feel like you were on the clock?
No, not so much on the. I think we were, what it was, on the edge. On the edge of this, you know, like, could it be something great or could it just fall apart and people think we're crazy? You know?
That was the thing.
That's what it was.
We were like, where does the line end? Like, where does it end where we officially become crazy? Where are we ambitious and then stop being ambitious and just insane? Like, when does that happen? And it always felt like it was right around the corner. Like, any day now we're going to be insane. This record's going to be like 2 years late. Dudes are going to grow beards. It's never going to come out. Like, stuff like that. Always felt like it was looming over you. So it then forced us, and me as a lyricist, to look inside myself, and we didn't have any answers. I didn't have anything to say, and I was like, I got to find that.
What happened? One band member in particular had to sort of like leave and sort of put some distance between themselves and the band?
Mikey had gone through a difficult period, depression-wise.
It was probably the most difficult time in my life. I've always been like kind of the person that kind of keeps things bottled up and internalize things, and I never dealt with a lot of things, and making this record made it was like taking a piggy bank and throwing it on the ground, and it was just like, and then I just broke down and had to leave the house for a while. It was super, I don't know, the scariest time in my life. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't know if I was going to be back in the band. I didn't know.
Was the future of the band in question at that point? Or?
Not necessarily, but it was at that moment that all like the confidence we had built up and all that kind of like going like, well, whatever, man. Like, we don't care what people say. Like, that's where that stuff started to creep in. And then it's because we were, I think, at our most vulnerable because one of us couldn't be in that house anymore. And it started to, you started to see all your weaknesses, and then that's all you saw. And then it put us in a very paralyzed state. And so in that way, yeah, I'd say there was definitely moments, whether we like to believe it or not, where we questioned our very existence, you know.
I mean, I'm sorry.
No.
Definitely, like when that happened, we didn't want to play because we were missing a member. So, the band wasn't complete, and we just kind of walked around kind of aimlessly. It took a while for us to get back going, starting writing again because of that.
So what changed? What made things better for you?
I started to slowly come back in the house and practicing.
And therapy helped.
Yeah, and I was going to tons of therapy and whatnot.
When you say the house, is this the Paramore
Yeah,
house?
the Paramore house, yeah. I stayed with a friend in Los Angeles for, was it like 2 months, I think. And yeah, I just tried to repair myself slowly but surely.
You guys, Gerard, you've been really, open in the past about your sobriety, and I think it was August of '04, you sort of stopped drinking, right?
Yeah.
And do circumstances like this, or the depression you talk about with this record, does it test that at all for you?
No, actually, that's really interesting. There was only a couple moments during that ultra bleak period where I was borderline like, man, I could really use a drink right now. There was definitely moments where I'd said it when we had a couple heavy meetings where I was just like, oh my God, I can't even deal with this anymore. It was like, if anything, that's why I made it through personally, was being clean. And I knew that the whole time. So, you know, if anything, if I was drinking and on drugs, I would have lost it.
You made an interesting comment recently that I think you said that, I know there's a lot of people out there who probably like to see me be all up again, you know. Is that, you really believe that, or you think that's paranoia?
Right. I mean, there's often a lot of times where I'm like, well, how much of it is paranoia and how much of it is... But, you know, when you have a lot of friends that are in bands, you hear a lot of stuff. Like, you hear a lot of stuff from people like, yeah, so-and-so said you're a closet drinker. They say you're a closet drug user still. They say it's just something you say in the press. And, but, yeah, I don't think that's paranoia. I think there are a lot of people that would like to see... They just like to see us fall down, really. That's what they want to see. They just want to see us disintegrate or tear ourselves apart, and I know that.
I sense a lot of people are on you guys' side, to tell you the truth. I mean, I know.
There's a lot more of that.
Even hipsters that you wouldn't necessarily think would be into a band like this, they make an exception for you.
I completely agree with you, and I think, you know, it's because we're so unashamed about what we are. But, you know, no, I wouldn't say it's the opposite way. I wouldn't say everybody's out to get us. I would say everybody's really on our side. I'd say there's a degree of an amount of people that would like to knock us down or see us knocked down. And that's common. Like, my favorite rock band of all time was Smashing Pumpkins. And I don't remember too many positive things said about that band, but everybody that supported them was a fellow musician and all their fans, and they had one of the hugest impacts ever. But I think to certain people there was something irritating about the fact that they were very unashamed about what they did, that they did things on a very grand scale. I think that threatens people, and so I think the negative elements that we get are from the threatening elements.
I'm going to tread lightly here, but when you do a couple of videos with Sam Bayer and you do a record with Rob Cavallo, that brings to mind a certain other favorite Warner band that we all know and love, and who you guys spent some time on the road with, of course. Were Green Day at all inspirational in terms of the idea of doing something more conceptual because of what happened with American Idiot?
That's a really good question, and you know, it's one that going into this record we knew we'd have to address, and we discussed it and became completely comfortable with it. We had been making concept records since Revenge, and we had been working on theme and concept songs since Bullets. Demolition Lovers, the last track off Bullets, basically leads you into 3 Cheers to Sweet Revenge. So there's even like a thematic connection. So that was, you know, we had always been interested in telling stories, and I think everybody knows that about us, even from listening to the first record. I think Green Day was always kind of interested in like The Who and Tommy, which is a band that I don't think we identify with as much as we identify with Queen or Pink Floyd, like Roger Waters' era. And but I think the thing about Green Day and us is I think they liked us so much because we were so different, you know, thematically and musically, yet we had the same ambition and we come from the same place, so we came from the basements, and I think they liked that about us, yet we were completely different from them. It was like two different coastal products, really, like of their environments, and so I think what
it made sense as a combination to me because you guys have a similar, it seems to me, philosophy about a lot of what you want to. I mean, the same band that does Minority and the same band that sort of champions the underdogs. I mean, there's a similar impulse.
It is a very similar impulse. Like, you know, we were underdogs just like them, and you know, in a lot of ways, when we were 16, inspired by the fact that they were underdogs, and we were underdogs in high school, and they really took us under their wing. And so when it came time to make this record, actually a lot of the decisions almost became logical in terms of a lot of the DNA of the bands are very similar, of both bands, and but it's almost like they do something with politics, we do something with death, and they're both grand, but they're not alike at all. But in that, since you're doing theatrics and you're doing something grand, you need a lot of production for that. And Cavallo was actually, who we met through Green Day, was so vocal about working with us. He had decided, like, this is the band I want to work with. He would say it in print. We had read an interview
with him.
Where he was like,
all right. They were like, oh, who's the next band you want to work with? And he was like, My Chemical Romance. And we were like, dude, the Jawbreaker dude?
Yeah.
With us?
which,
awesome.
you know, yeah, and to give you a little history on Rob Cavallo's previous work, you know, he had done Jawbreaker's Dear You. Now, Jawbreaker's Dear You, in a lot of ways, is the template for our sound on Revenge, as far as the song structure and what we want. Like, Helena is basically accident-prone in a lot of ways, you know? And Give 'Em Hell Kid is basically Fireman. So, I mean, you know, those were heavily inspired by that record, that specific Jawbreaker record, which is the only one Rob did. So he was very vocal about wanting to work with us, and we even had a discussion with him. I think one of the first things we asked him when he came out to see us in New York was, how do you feel about, you just made American Idiot, and that was like the biggest record in the world. Like, how do you feel about working with us? I mean, do you think, you know, and he was like, I don't even think about that stuff. I just think you guys are a great band, and you're going to make the important record next year. And so that was easy. So to us, it became then about working with simply the best people. You know, it was like, well, why not work with the best? Like, why wouldn't we, you know? And we met Sam at a video award ceremony, and I'd seen his reel. Me and Bob were there. And he got a Lifetime Achievement Award. I watched his reel, and then I was like, wait a minute, this guy did Bullet with Butterfly Wings. That's like my favorite rock video, because he had painted the pumpkins in such a new light. You'd never seen the pumpkins look like they had just come from space to annihilate the earth, you know? And that's what I wanted for the band. So it was that sole decision. We needed to be painted completely differently.
You know, I don't know if I've ever heard sort of a better succinct description of this band, at least my understanding of this band, or of you, than the savior of the broken, the beaten, and the damned.
Yeah.
My question for you is, though, is it progressively harder as time goes on to sort of be the, you know, say the champion of the underdogs, the broken,
Right.
the beaten, when you're the rich, the adored, the acclaimed?
Right. You know, it isn't, because the funny thing is, I think because it, again, is another thing that's a part of our DNA, being underdogs, that never goes
It's
away.
always inside of you.
You can never shake it. You
The
can't
attention
avoid
makes
it.
you more awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's weird. You know, sometimes you start to think like, I don't know, like we get interviews and stuff like that, and like, why do people want to know?
No matter what, we'll always be the underdogs, no matter what
Yeah.
situation we get
Well,
put in.
another thing is, too, like, the more people that learn about you, even if you're an underdog, then, you know, you could come under fire a lot, and the more attention you get, and the more threatening or dangerous you appear to people, and then the more people try to kind of knock you down. Because, like, we're the kind of guys that we show up to, like, a celebrity function, if we have to be at one, or an award show or something, we still don't fit in with anybody.
I have read you said that success has, in a way, made you guys more insular and kind of
Absolutely.
circle the wagons a little bit.
Right.
Do you find the more successful you get, distrustful of people wanting to get to know you, what their motives are? Everyone.
When you get a lot of attention, everybody kind of wants a piece of you, kind of thing. And even when we started out, like, it was always just like, you know, 5 guys like locked in a van. You know, go to the van, to the venue, play the show, and that's what was the most important. You know, it was the music and the shows and putting that across to the kids. You know, and we have little, I guess, things that make us happy, like little things that make us happy, like,
Yeah,
you know,
same
video
little
games
things.
and books and comic books, and we keep it to this little core, and we really concern ourselves with what's important, which is the music.
The
Everything
music
else
and
is just,
the
you know,
show.
all this over here.
Peripheral
I think it
stuff.
borderline disappoints people when we show up to somewhere and the only thing we're interested in is playing the show. I think they get very disappointed in that. I think they expect something different out of you. They expect you to want to be a rock star, or, you know, I don't know. Like, I've met kids that have seemed kind of bummed because it's like we weren't into, like, being celebrities.
We're on the verge of what could be a whole other level for you guys. You've said recently that, you know, we're ready for whatever comes our way. Is there a possibility that My Chemical Romance could get, you know, I don't even know what too big would be, but
Right.
too big, too fast?
This band has always kind of had really big imaginations, and I think we have so much fun within those imaginations, within the worlds we create. I think however big we get, if we get like super big, it's all going to help that vision come to life. And I think that's the benefits we see out of it. We never look at mansions or sports cars. we're thinking, oh man, maybe we can get like a World War II fighter plane on stage now. so I think we've really welcomed that kind of stuff. I think actually with the ambition that we have and the record that we made, I think it deserves to be huge. So I don't know if there's a too big, you know. I know that even if it's too big, or even if it was super small, that when it stops becoming special is when we'd stop doing it anyway. And that could happen in a basement, or it could happen in an arena.
Arenas are, excuse me, arenas are certainly ahead, but it wasn't that long ago there was basements. And
right.
I mean, it occurred to me that if I'm not mistaken, it's almost like 5 years to the month that this band was started, right?
Like, we're 5 years old.
Well, this is not too bad for 5 years,
No.
I'd say,
No.
for what you guys have achieved. Do you, and final thing, but do you ever say, you know, why us? Do you ever go, what is it, what's different about this band?
It's weird. Like, there's a lot of bands that we've met over the couple of years, and that I think are truly amazing.
Right.
You know, that I really think should have as much attention as us. And sometimes it's unfortunate that they don't. But I don't know if I've ever questioned why us. I just had so much fun being in this band that you don't even have time to question that kind of thing. You're just like, why? Because
right.
we really believe in what we do.
That's what it is.
We have a lot of heart.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's what it is. Like, there's moments, I think when the super big stuff happens, that's when you're like, well, why us? And that's natural because we're all like really humble guys. Like, we try to keep grounded in reality. We keep really good people around us that are not afraid to tell us when we're being full of shit. But at the end of the day, I think we all know why it is us, and we know that we give people something that they don't exactly get from other bands. We know that there's something special about us. There's something unique, and it may not last forever, and it probably won't because it shouldn't, because it's beautiful. But there's just, like he said, a lot of heart.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, no bullshit. One of the reasons I still do what I do is for experiences like talking to a band like you guys.
Thank you.
Because it's been a total pleasure, and I can't tell you how much I wish you the best with this record. It's certainly something you should be proud of. So.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.